Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I was 39 the spring our son learned to make that hiccupy laugh babies do, like their bodies are surprised by happiness. It came out of him in little bursts that made Julia put a hand to her mouth and grin like she was afraid to scare it away. We'd sit on the living room rug and watch him kick at the dangling owls on his play gym and feel, for a minute at a time, like we had done the one thing a life is supposed to do: bring something good into the world and keep it safe. I'm a firefighter. People expect that to mean I like chaos. The truth is the opposite. We work chaos so other people can get normal back. I like routines, checklists, the dignified pleasure of knowing where your gloves are in the dark. I built our house on a piece of land my uncle sold me cheap, framed it with friends who owed me favors from high school and a few guys from the house who were willing to trade their off day for pizza and a crawl space they could brag about. It took a year of weekends and a loan I could feel in my ribs, but when we moved in the walls felt like they knew my hands. I carved a notch under the kitchen window where the sill wouldn't sit flat. I know which stair squeaks. I know that if you crack the backslider in summer, the fan in the hall pulls cool air through the whole place like a slow river. I poured the little slab for the grill myself and got it a half bubble level because I was tired and it was dark and I thought, close enough. It makes the grease run off a corner and I still feel it in my teeth. Our son, Ben, came in late January, a scrunched bundle who screamed at the hospital lights and then fell asleep clutching my finger like a lifeline. A nurse showed me how to wrap him like a burrito and said tight is right, and I remember thinking I'd take orders from this woman for the rest of my life if it meant we got to leave the building with him. On the way home, Julia sat in the back seat next to the car seat like it was a diplomatic convoy. She stroked his cheek and said, "I love him," in a voice I hadn't heard before, lighter and trembly both. Night shifts at the station are their own animal. We run 24/48s, on a day, off too. It means sometimes I sleep in a room with a row of bunks and a bank of lockers while a radio murmurs in the background like a prayer. It means sometimes I'm sitting at our kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a bottle in one hand and a baby in the crook of my elbow, trying to remember the line between exhaustion and contentment. A captain once told me, "You don't make time, kid. You trade for it." I traded. I coached my schedule like a stubborn dog, made it yield to the pediatrician appointments and the tummy time in the diaper pail that always needed emptying when I was already late. I put in a baby monitor the week we got home, one camera in the nursery, a second in the living room, both tied to an app that sent pings to my phone when it detected motion or cries. I ran the wires clean through the wall and made a little shelf for the base station because the thought of it dangling made my molars ache. We tested it on a Saturday afternoon. I walked into the nursery, waved, and watched myself on Julia's phone. "We've got a little big brother now," she said, laughing, and then softer, "Good." People say the first months are the hardest, and maybe they are, but they're also simple. Feed, burp, sleep, repeat. We were too tired to fight, too busy learning a person who couldn't tell us what he needed except with his one blunt instrument, a cry that shifted pitch like a weather report. Julia would put her head on my shoulder on the couch and fall asleep upright, and I'd pretend the stillness was a choice and not a mercy. She told me in March, "I feel alone." We were sitting in the kitchen and the bottle sterilizer was puffing steam like a small train. I said the thing I'd say to someone in a kitchen fire, "I'm here." I meant it. I also didn't ask her to explain. It felt like asking her to justify the weather. I figured time would do what time does. That's on me. I know better than anyone that fires don't starve when you starve them. They go looking. Our neighbor, Vince, is the kind of guy who knows the brand name of everything he owns. He moved in 2 summers ago with a truck that looked like it hadn't touched dirt and a dog he never walked without a Bluetooth headset. He'd flag me down when I mowed to ask about lumber suppliers or ask if the station got any wild stuff lately, and when I told him about a kitchen fire that didn't spread because the homeowner closed the door, he said, "Crazy," with the airy disbelief of someone who's never had to think about consequences up close. He runs something in logistics. He has good hair. When he moved his grill out back, I helped him carry it 2 steps because he asked and then watched him fire it up at 11 p.m. Because there's a certain type of man who thinks smoke is a personality. No point in pretending I liked him. I nodded when I had to. That was it. The night in question wasn't dramatic at the firehouse. We'd had a couple of medical calls, one lift assist for a gentleman my dad's age who slipped in the shower, one chest pain that turned out to be heartburn and fear. We had pasta at 6 and cleaned up fast because the tones dropped twice in a row, the second time for a reported brush fire that turned out to be a kid with a bonfire and a sense of timing. By midnight, the bay was quiet enough that you could hear the compressor kick on and off in the SCBA room. I rolled out my sleeping bag on the bunk nearest the exit because that's habit. If the tones drop, you want the softest landing between sleep and your boots. Sometime after 2, the monitor app pinged, motion detected, living room. I glanced at the nursery feed first because that's what you do, you check the baby and then you let yourself check the rest. Ben was a dark shape in the slats, the little chest rising and falling. The noise machine was a hush on the audio that made me think of Ocean without the good parts. I swiped to the living room. The camera points toward the entry hall and the couch. You can see anyone coming in from the front door or cutting through from the kitchen to the bedrooms. A figure crossed the frame, tall, broad through the shoulders, a jacket I recognized as the kind that comes with a logo you pay extra for. The camera caught him in the too clear night vision that makes human skin into a ghost's. He turned on the lamp by the couch and I could see his profile. Vince. Warm light makes everyone look familiar. This was not that. He looked like a man who had been in a room before. A second figure floated in behind him. Julia. Bare feet, leggings, a hoodie I gave her for Christmas with a station patch on the sleeve. She touched the back of her hair like it needed an explanation. She did not turn toward the nursery. She put her phone on the counter, screen down, a move I recognized too well because I do it when I don't want my captain to see an alert during a drill. The app pinged again. Crib, no motion. It should have been a relief and it was. It was also a punch, because the relief felt like a permission slip, baby safe, house quiet, door open. I lay on my back on the narrow bunk and watched them move through my living room like I wasn't a person in the world. Vince drifted to the couch as if the couch belonged to the part of his life where he is casual. Julia picked up the folded blanket we keep on the arm and then didn't unfold it. She looked at him. He put his hand on her waist and then both of them disappeared under the lip of the camera's frame. I could still hear. I didn't turn the volume down. I didn't turn it up. I set the phone face down on my chest like 40 extra pounds and stared at the ceiling tiles and counted each sound that meant nothing at all and everything at once. The HVAC balance shifting, a truck downshifting somewhere on the highway, the electronic tick that means the charger is working. I saved the clip. That's a sentence that sounds colder than it was. My thumb moved like an animal with its own brain. Save. Download. Archive. I ran the steps like a drill. I set a pin. I moved the file somewhere else. I could tell you I did it because some part of me already knew I wanted proof for court or because I knew denial can do a lot of work and I wanted to lay down a boundary that wasn't words. All true. Also true, I didn't know what else to do. At 4, we got a call for a fire alarm at a dentist's office. We rolled into the dark street with the engine lights bouncing off the windows downtown like rain on a pond. It was a faulty sensor. We propped the door, cleared the smoke from the toaster in the break room, and everyone laughed because people are gentle with themselves at 4 a.m. I stood in the parking lot and felt like a photo of myself, flat, glossy, inaccurate. I didn't go home in the morning. I drove to the lake and parked where the water throws little diamonds up at the shore at sunrise. I drank bad coffee from a station mug and made a list in a notebook I use for hardware orders and measurements for projects I haven't started. That's the kind of man I am. I make a list when what I need is probably a scream. On it, call her parents. Clean the living room because I can't stand the thought of them seeing our house messy and thinking it means something. Print a picture of Ben for the fridge because the last one is from the hospital and he looks like a potato. Pick up empanadas from the place on 5th because her mother loves them and will eat when she doesn't think she can if you put something in front of her with a good smell. At 10 I called her parents. Come for dinner, I told her mom, Susan. I'll make taco bowls. Bring your appetite. She laughed and said, you had me at dinner, and then, is everything okay? I said, we're figuring some things out. That's not a lie. At home, I showered and scrubbed the dishes and vacuumed the rug because the rug always looks better with fresh vacuum tracks. I changed Ben, kissed his stomach, and got an almost laugh out of him with the ridiculous voice I swore I'd never use. Julia texted, "How was your night?" Habit has gravity. I wrote, "Slow." Also not a lie. She added a heart. I didn't. I set the monitor base by the TV and tucked the HDMI cable where no one would trip on it. I held my phone and watched my thumb hover over the app. I've pulled hoses through smoke I couldn't see through. This felt more dangerous. Dinner smelled like cumin and charred corn. I held Ben on my hip and opened the door with my free hand when Susan and Mark arrived. Susan went straight for Ben with a coo that made him kick like a wind-up toy. Mark set a six-pack on the counter and hand-checked a stud he'd watched me install behind the drywall last year because that's the kind of thing Mark does, and it made me love him a little. Julia came out of the bedroom in a soft sweater and the look women get when they want their mothers to say you look thin and not you look tired. She kissed Ben and then kissed her mother and set plates on the table like we were going to do an ordinary thing on an ordinary night. We ate. It is one of the odd graces of being raised middle-class Midwestern that you can keep a conversation alive no matter what you've swallowed. Mark asked about the brush truck. I asked him about the room or the hardware store might close. Susan told a story about her book club. Julia laughed, and the laugh was too bright and then not bright enough. Ben gurgled and fell asleep in the swing. "I want to show you a video," I said, when the plates were pushed back and the room smelled like lime and the last of the cilantro. From the baby monitor. I turned toward the TV, and the air changed. If you work in rooms where things go wrong, you learn to feel when they're about to. The temperature shifts. People unconsciously straighten. Bodies make space for whatever is coming. Julia said, "Eric," in the tone she uses when she believes she can steer a moment with my name. I looked at her. I hope I kept my face kind. I was not interested in cruelty. I was interested in the record. I opened the app. I tapped Saved Clips. I chose the one with the timestamp from 2 a.m. I hit the little square that throws the image to the TV. The living room came into view, our living room, this room, but in black and white, last night, with Vince's jaw like a line you could cut your thumb on and Julia's sweatshirt sleeve with my station patch shoulder high in the frame. No one spoke while the figures crossed the space. The little white motion box tracked the movement like a barcode reader. When Vince put his hand at the small of her back, Susan made a sound men make when they smash their thumb with a hammer, a single breathy syllable that insists on existing because the body won't keep it in. When Julia took 3 quick steps after him, Mark stood up so fast his chair feet squealed against the tile. I paused the video before they left the frame. The room was a held breath. Ben slept in the swing with his mouth open, a small pink punctuation mark. Mark looked at his daughter. He didn't flail for euphemisms. He didn't ask me why. He didn't ask what exactly we were seeing as if the definition of a frame were difficult. He composed himself the way men do when there is a fire in a house they love, and then he said, "You didn't just betray your husband, you betrayed your child." It would be cleaner if I could tell you Julia shouted or collapsed or fell to her knees with a confession that explained everything. She didn't. She sat back down and pressed her palms to her thighs like she was warming herself on a cold bench. "I was lonely," she said, her voice small and honest in the way people are when they run out of clever. "I felt like a mother, not a person. Vince made me feel like I was still in there." Susan closed her eyes. "You were in there," she said. "We were all in there with you." She nodded at me without looking away from her daughter. "Most of all? You chose the one person who doesn't belong in this house." She stood and walked to the sink and put both hands on the counter like she would push the whole room into the earth if she could. "I'm ashamed of you." Julia started to cry. I hate that it still hurt me to see it. There's a muscle that doesn't stop trying to protect the people it loves just because the head knows better. She reached for my hand. I didn't give it. I tucked my fingers under the edge of the table the way I do on the engine when we hit a pothole. We didn't shout. That's not who we are. We made the next decisions anyone in our situation would make if they intended to live with themselves afterward. We picked a lawyer. We talked custody like it was a job. We set a schedule and agreed not to move the goalposts without talking. We wrote out numbers and signed our names and handed the papers to a clerk who has a face like a schoolteacher and probably goes home to a quiet house and a glass of wine at the end of the day and wonders how people do this all day then rest. Vince moved 2 months later. I watched the U-Haul back into his driveway and felt nothing like victory. He gave me an awkward nod like we were neighbors in the universal sense and not in the way that meant I had to repaint my living room because every color looked like something I didn't want to remember. He left the grill on the slab and the slab stained the concrete, and I scrubbed at it like a penance and then let it be because some marks don't lift. If you're waiting for a bar fight or a scene at the mailbox, I'm going to disappoint you. I don't like the taste of rage the morning after. We keep the peace for Ben. That's not a slogan. It's a practice. Julia and I learned to talk about diapers and naps and the pediatrician's weird opening hours like co-workers who don't need to like each other to respect the work. It took effort. It still does. When she holds him on the porch and he laughs that hiccup laugh, something in me unstitches and tries to run back down the road to the house where we were all still dumb and good. I let it run. I don't follow. The guys at the station found out the way guys find out everything, one sentence, tossed in the kitchen like a rag that needs washing. "You good?" my lieutenant asked, watching me chop peppers for chili like someone was grading me on uniformity. I shrugged. He said, "We've got you," and he meant it. The next shift, someone had stocked my coffee the way I like it, the good stuff I don't buy because I'm stubborn about money. Someone else cleaned my turnout boots without mentioning it. A rookie asked me how to pack hose on the high-rise load and I took my time with him like I had all the time in the world. Work changed in small ways. The tones hit different. The house fire where we pulled the kid's hamster out of a terrarium and the mother sobbed might have once rolled off my back like a wave I knew how to dive under. That day I sat in the back step and listened to the mother's breath hitch while the engine cooled and felt like a man who had been given temporary custody of everyone's small treasure. The lift assist for the old man with the satin pillowcase because his wife saw some YouTube video about pores. I tucked the sheet under him like he was my own. I have always cared. I care more. Ben is 6 months now. He holds my thumb with more intention. He has a way of looking at me from the floor like I am a complicated device he's going to figure out if I give him 2 more minutes. We do a thing in the evenings at my place where I set him in the bumbo seat on the counter while I cook. He babbles. I narrate. Onions in. Butter in. Don't tell your pediatrician. Sometimes I put the monitor app up on the tablet and let the nursery camera show an empty crib like a promise we keep for later. It still pings sometimes when the cat walks through the living room at Julia's and I swipe without thinking and see that house in grayscale, the swing, the couch, the rug I picked because it hides stains. I close it. I am learning how not to scratch. People love to ask me, "Do you think you'll forgive her?" As if it's a destination with a sign at the boundary line. Maybe. I know forgiveness isn't a gift you hand over wrapped. It's a set of muscles. You work them or you don't. Some days I do. Some days I put the workbench light on and make a frame for a photo of Ben with his cheeks like apples and that's what passes for church. Some days I imagine what I would say to the version of me watching the phone in the bunk that night. Something like, "This is going to be the worst part. And also, you are going to be okay in ways you cannot picture because your pictures are all of a life that is over. Make new ones." We put a new camera in the nursery on a different angle. I adjusted the motion zone so it ignores the curtains and the mobile and only lights up if someone stands where someone shouldn't stand. I patched the little screw hole the old mount left and sanded it smooth, then shot a dab of paint and feathered it until even I couldn't tell. I held the little bracket in my hand afterward and laughed, because it's nothing, 2 ounces of plastic and a promise, and I have been treating it like a guardrail on a highway. The other day, Julia's dad stopped by my place during my off hours with a box of peaches from a farmer's market. He stood in the driveway with his hands on his hips the way he does when he's about to begin a speech and then didn't give one. He said, "You need anything?" I said, "No." He nodded and looked at the house and the lawn and Ben's little plastic wading pool turned upside down so the sun wouldn't blanch it, and then he said, "Thank you for keeping the video short." It took me a second to understand. He meant, "Thank you for pausing it. Thank you for not making intimacy into spectacle. Thank you for dignifying your own pain in our kitchen." I said, "Yeah." He put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed like he was saying a prayer over me and the peaches and the life we were managing to not ruin further. On shift last week, after a drill where we practiced venting a roof on the training tower in a wind that whipped the steam off our heads like smoke, the rookie asked me why we close interior doors when we can. Keeps the fire from getting air, I said. Buys time. Buys you a room with a different story. He nodded like he understood and then said, "Does that really work?" I thought about a video paused on a frame and a boy asleep breathing the good air and a sentence a grandfather said at a kitchen table, a sentence that hit the fire like a curtain. Yeah, I said. It works. Sometimes it's the only thing that does. I don't know how this ends. Maybe there's a woman in the future who loves the way my hands look the first minute after I take off a pair of work gloves. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I'll teach Ben how to swing a hammer without hitting his thumb and how to set a ladder at a safe angle and how to make chili at the station because it's what you do when you're the new guy in a room full of men who eat like they've earned it. I hope I'll teach him the most boring lesson there is: don't be the reason the people who love you sleep with their phones under their pillows. Be the kind of man who puts the phone face down because you're done for the night and your family is in the house and the house is quiet and the quiet is a kind of music you learn to hear. Sometimes, late, after Ben is down and the dishwasher is doing its long, soothing work and the monitor app shows a small rectangle of crib bars like the simplest fence in the world, I sit on the step by the back slider with a beer and listen to the neighborhood. A dog 2 doors over announces a raccoon. A car door clicks. Somewhere, a TV murmurs. The breeze lifts the maple leaves and sets them down again. The fan in the hallway pulls cool air through the rooms I framed and wired and painted and then had to remake in my head. The house hums. It feels, for a few minutes at a time, like we brought something good into the world and kept it safe, and like maybe that good thing is me too. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.